Everybody, welcome back. I want to talk about capitalism, and I want to talk about it from my honest viewpoint and opinions. And my viewpoint and opinions on this may actually surprise you. You may actually be totally shocked by what I'm about to say, but it's foundational for me, and it's really what I believe. And so I'm hoping by making these videos that I will encourage you guys to, comment in the comment section and be interactive and really help me hone my viewpoints and beliefs and really, if I got something majorly wrong, I want to know because I feel like too many times in this conversation, it's socialism versus capitalism, and you have to choose a side and you're stuck on that ideology. And I like to look at things in nuance because I like to better myself. Okay. And so if I'm not constantly sharpening and challenging my beliefs, I don't. I can just sit in this camp and quote Ben Shapiro to you, right? Which I don't think is super helpful. Or I can go to, a far leftist camp and I can, quote that nonsense to you. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to be just in a camp where I'm just quoting, tag phrases. You know what I mean? I don't want my ideology to be, or my beliefs to just represent a single meme, right? I believe there's nuance. And in order for us to get better, we have to challenge ourselves. And so, we're talking about capitalism. I want to talk about capitalism from, my perspective, a prepper homesteader's perspective. I truly believe, right, that socialism, it may sound good in theory, but when it's played out, it always it leads to government tyranny, right? You can't have socialism without government tyranny. But on the same note, I look at capitalism, I look at the best systems of capitalism, and you can't have capitalism without government interference. And government interference ultimately leads to tyranny. Because if you look at, historically, the best free market systems, and you can look at, you can look at everything from the Roman Empire to United States, free market system, and we're on the doorstep of socialism. How do we get here? Well, I truly believe if you look at everything, capitalism ultimately leads to socialism. And that'll be another video for another time. But overall, I think it's very disingenuous to say capitalism is 100% great and it's just, it's what we need and it's the tool that fixes everything. Because like I said, you can't show me any good systems of socialism working. But in capitalism, you can't show me any good systems that don't ultimately lead to socialism, right? So, and that's the thing. You can't show me true capitalism without government interference. And government interference leads to tyranny, right? It leads to socialism. So capitalism leads to socialism. Socialism ultimately leads to destruction. So realistically, capitalism will ultimately lead to its destruction. And with that being said, the truth of the matter is I haven't found anybody that really truly believes in free market capitalism through and through. Now, it's a great idea that the market will always create a solution for a problem, right? And people like to point out the fact that, well, take food crisis, right? Since we're in a preparedness circle, right? Food crisis, go ahead and let people buy as much as they want to buy, right? So when you do that, you create a need, whether that need is started artificially or what. Take food. So if food is constantly running out, that tells the market we need to pump more food because there is capital to be gained. So what do? They start producing more food, and in the interim, what do? Prices will go up, right? So when you create prices to go up, people will either think it's worth it or not worth it, and so the market system, always equals itself out. And I think that's a good idea, right? And ultimately, though, what happens? Well, as we see, price, we see in our agricultural sector, for example, we see that there's price fixing in the agricultural market, right? If farmers produce too much milk and the price becomes too low, well, we need to start dumping milk because we want the price to be stable at this cost set, and they subsidize to ensure that there are certain price sets. They do that with culling of herds, whether that's pork, meat, chicken, eggs. So we see that. So we see government interference. Well, why is there government interference for? Can we have a system without government interference? Well, you can, but nobody is going to state that we don't need government regulation, right? And even those that do will try to proclaim that we don't need government interference is bad. Let me ask you a question. If total free market capitalism is okay, should it be legal for a company to pay for my vote? The company's like, hey, I have a vested interest in my company, so I want you to vote for this politician, and if you do, I'll pay you. Well, this is a voluntary trade. This is a voluntary exchange. You want my vote? You're going to give me money? Well, my vote's kind of important to me, so I know you sold it to this guy for, $50, but I want 200. And I'm worth it because I'm in a big family here, and I will convince, 5 people to vote in that way. So I want you to give me 200. And then you have another person that they give, let's say they get 50,000 because that person's an influencer. So I want to buy votes. We would say, especially I'm using this as an example because we're going through this whole election process. This election cycle is, lots of up and downs there. Everybody would say, most people would say, no, you can't buy votes. Well, why not? It's capitalism. Why can't we do a voluntary exchange? If that person wants my vote and they're willing to give me the money for it, why is that a bad thing, right? So no matter what, in a free market capitalist society, once they start producing well, it's like anything else. They have the capital to then influence people, whether that's with revenue, whether that's with advertising, subsidies, lobbying. That's a great example, right? So when you have companies that do well, they want to control the market. So capitalism is a dog-eat-dog world. You produce or you don't. Well, one way is through the fair exercise of, capitalistic ploy. The fair exercise of, I'm going to just create the better products. That's one way to do it, but that's not the only way to fight, right? That is a very, let's take a military approach to this, right? So you can have like what the English used to do, the British back in the day. All our guys come up, your guys come up, we face each other long line, we present rifles, right? Fair, equal, go, right? That's one way of fighting. And then you have, things like guerrilla warfare where ambushes are happening. Free market's the same way. So yes, companies can produce just better products and you can tell them, hey, just produce better products, but that's not the only way to fight. If a company's doing really well, we're going to just buy out these mom and pop businesses. Or you know what? Let's add a license, right? Let's add a licensing in this industry, whether that's barbers, whether that's, healthcare, whether that's beauty supplies, supplements, all that stuff, whether that's, you need to have a permit to paint, right? So there's so many different bureaucracy and red tape that big companies can lobby for in order to get rid of their competition, because this group we may not be able to produce the best product because these other people have found another way to do it. So we could fight fair, right? And we could just make a better product, or we can use the government bureaucracy and red tape. Well, that's not real capitalism. Well, it's the capitalism we live in, right? I can say the same thing about socialism, right? It just hasn't been tried correctly. No, it's been tried correctly and it's failed. Same thing with capitalism. Are you telling me that capitalism has never been tried correctly and it can't be applied correctly? Because in all free market capitalist systems, if they are going to be successful, they have to fight for survival. And fighting is not, like I said, just we produce the better product and service. Well, let's be more sneaky. Let's create licensing and let's choke out these younger and these smaller businesses. And that's what they do. And so they get in bed with politicians. They get in bed with the government because the government controls, right? And so there's no system unless you can show me a system. Can you show me a true free market capitalistic system with no government oversight? It's okay. I'll wait. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. Now, are there good standards for capitalism? Sure. I'm not going to argue with that. But every single one of them has government influence, government oversight, right? And so we can sit here and talk about things in a bubble with no nuance, right? We can sit here and we can say, well, you know what? That's not real capitalism, or I don't agree with that, but capitalism's still better. No, I think that's a great point, right? If I had to choose, right, between a capitalistic system and a socialist system, I'm going to choose the capitalistic system. But I understand that there is ultimately going to lead to government oversight, which leads to government influence, which leads to government control, which leads to tyranny, which leads to socialism, which leads to destruction. It's what it is. Because if you are going to be any kind of regulatory body over a free market system, that's how it's going to go into play, right? Because it has to. There's no way to say we are going to have government oversight But what happens if that oversight comes with standards? So standards have to be applied. Well, who's in charge of that? Fallible man. Who then goes and lobbies for X, Y, and Z? Capitalism. Capitalism, if it's going to fight for survival, it's going to use every tool in its mechanism. So it would be nice to say that we're only going to go by these set of rules and standards, and there's going to be no human interaction. Sure, if everything was done by a computer that was wholly unbiased, but that's not the reality. So the reality is there's always going to be government interference, government oversight, which leads to government interference, which leads to government control, which leads to tyranny, socialism, which leads to destruction. And so it's really interesting. And the idea of capitalism, I think, is also harmful, right? Take, for example, a lot of preppers, Alaska prepper, Buffalo prepper, Magic prepper, all the Canadian prepper, like all the preppers, right? All these influencers, they constantly talk about how it's crazy that there's not food on the shelf, right? So this idea of food scarcity to them, or resource scarcity, it's just that's all they harp on. Stockpiling. And this comes from a capitalistic mindset, right? Because the idea is, take what Alaska prepper said, there's no turkeys. And the idea is, I can't believe I have the money to pay for this service, and I'm so surprised that that service is not there. It's an entitlement. I am entitled to this service because I have the political capital and I have the financial capital to purchase it. Therefore, it should be available. And so that mindset's dangerous, because that mindset is going to, and I'm not trying to be overly, dogmatic here, but it's the truth. That consumer mindset ultimately leads to a weaker, non-rugged individual, right? Because you're conceding the fact that in this system, if a turkey costs me, I'm just going to throw a random number out there. If you're buying a large turkey, let's say it costs you $30-$40, right? I have $40 in my pocket, and that turkey costs $37.89 or whatever. I have the money to buy that turkey, but that turkey's not available. There's something wrong here. This is wrong. This is a catastrophe. This is a problem, right? And so when you're in this idea that just because you have fiat currency in the mode of exchange in which you should be able to get that service or product and you can't, that drives panic in people. That's dangerous because it shows weakness. It shows a very unsustainable, inefficient way of doing things, right? But from my perspective, like I said, capitalism is great because it allows me to take control of my future, right? So for me, I don't go out and I don't buy turkeys to put in my, I don't go to the grocery store and buy turkeys. What do? I buy wood, right? I buy metal, right? I buy fencing, and I create an environment in which I can take turkeys and I can grow them myself, right? I do it sustainably. So capitalism has allowed me to set up a sustainable ecosystem for myself, because my job ultimately is to be as far undependent, far excluded from the system that is going to fail me as possible. And capitalism allows me to do that. But I'm not mistaken that that system owes me anything. I know I have short amount of time, and if I want something to work, I need to do it in the most efficient way possible. And for me, the most efficient way is not going to the grocery store and hoping that that service or product is available. My idea of efficiency is ensuring that I have a system set up to where I can have it whenever I want it. And so I think that's important. So for prepper homesteader, capitalism is great because I realize that system, that just-in-time supply system, is dangerous, and it does not have my best interest in mind, because the whole purpose of that system is monetary gain, which that will be fought at the political level, the economic level. These companies are doing everything they can to create the higher bottom line. And they can cover it up with customer service. They can cover it up with we're producing a great product. And those are all good fronts. Okay? They're all good fronts for what they're trying to do. And I'm sure deep down inside, they like to think that they want the best product. The reason why they're doing so well is because they have the best product and their customer service is outstanding. And they try to be convenient and all that stuff. And to a short extent, that's true. But they are still fighting on that political, economic level, especially if they're a big company. They're absolutely open and welcome to red tape that would destroy the other guy, because that is survival. Look at this from just the pure perspective of what it is to survive, right? So from that point of view, we know that there's red tape and bureaucracy in agriculture. We know there's red tape and bureaucracy in energy. We know there's red tape and bureaucracy in any consumable good or natural product. That's a fact, right? That's a fact. You can't just go out there and start cutting down trees and making your own lumber company. There's permits, there's trusts, there's all these different things you have to buy and purchase before you can even touch your first tree, right? And those are controlled by the government, right? So no matter what you do, there is going to be a government interference. There is going to be a governmental, there's going to be a governmental contract, right? And we're even seeing this with stores for not only on the government level, but individuals. You have to wear a mask. That's our store rules. Everything else be damned. This is what we want. And so when you walk into that store, that is a government, that's a contract, citizen to business, you have to abide by, or else they can use the weight of the government to exclude you. And I'm just going to leave it at that. I'm not going to get into any more details on that. But that's factually true, and we factually see that. So for me, like I said, ultimately, capitalism is better than socialism, but capitalism ultimately does lead to socialism, right? And ultimately, the downfall is the overdependence on capital. That's why we are here in our current state. That is why we are here, because the end result of capitalism evolving is to socialism. It ultimately evolves into that because there are government controls. And people want government controls, right? People want, because if not, companies are going to do what they're going to do for that product revenue, right? Let me give you a great example. People say, well, we need housing code enforcement, right? We can't just let companies do whatever they want. Somebody that's in their purest capitalistic form will say, no, that's garbage, because if this company produces garbage houses, they're going to run out of business because people aren't going to want to produce that garbage house. And then people for government control says, well, how many people have to die in these bad houses and how many bad things have to happen before that happens, right? So is it worth the squeeze? So that's the argument, right? Capitalism ultimately fixes itself, which I do, but how much damage does it take before it can get there, right? How much damage? So obviously, most people, because they don't want to take the time and energy to ensure that the house is structurally sound, they rely on a government system to put their faith in the government system that these codes are going to be upheld, right? That's a government form of control. So a business that's in building, right, that does a really good job, or, they get really big, they can now influence, and they do influence on the red tape level. Well, this permit's required, you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. And they do it under the guise of safety, but in reality, we see it's for control, right? I truly believe it would be super nice, right? It'd be super nice that, let's say there's no housing code authority. No matter what house I buy, I'm going to get my own private inspector. I understand there's government regulation and there's government tape right now to this day. But guess what? When I bought my house, I made sure I had a guy I trust inspect that home. So how my purchasing power and the way I purchase things doesn't change regardless of what the policies and regulations are, because I don't care about that. I care about sound, safe, reliability, right? And so I will hire my own guy for that. But most people, a lot of people don't do that. A lot of people just trust that the person is doing them right. And we see that every day with relationships. We see that with how people spend their money. It's just, we see it, right? So capitalism has formed a very unrugged people that are unwilling to do their own research and are unwilling to do their own process, right? Who has the time to do all that? And that's where the problem really lies, right? And so I would say from a capitalistic standpoint, yes, I'm all about the free market system, but bear in mind what it comes with. You are going to have people that cut corners. So you have to do your own due diligence. And that's the problem. People don't want to do their own due diligence. Due diligence is a bad word. Nobody wants to do that. So people are always going to be in favor of that system. And then the people that I have met that are just total free market, like no government, when I bring up should people be able to buy votes? Because if you truly believe that people should be able to buy votes, then you're opening yourself up to an easy socialist takeover, or easy takeover of any branch or any ideology. Because if you could just pay me for my vote, hey, millennial, I'm going to give you this much money. I want you to vote for this person. Show me the cash money, right? Should that be allowed? Because that's free market. It's a voluntary exchange of goods that's owned by a private entity. So you can say no, you can't do that. Okay, so now you are introducing, excuse me, now you're introducing government oversight, which means there's government controls, which means there has to be government response when those controls are disregarded. You see where it goes. And so in real life, majority of people don't truly believe in true free market capitalism, because if you did, you'd be for anything as long as there's a voluntary exchange. I think the election night example is a great idea. So with that being said, always going to be government oversight, government interference, government control. And if you can please point me at one example where that doesn't happen, I want to take a look at it. I want to be better. I want to hone myself. Show me an example where there's free markets without government oversight in any degree. If you have no government oversight, then there's no government control. There's no government, interference. But I haven't found one. And ultimately, like I said, capitalism is a survival of the fittest, right? And so you are going to adapt and you're going to fight on all sides, all cylinders. So you're going to do the customer service mantra, the better product mantra. When you get big enough, you're going to start advocating for your own legislation to be put in place, your own licenses, your own this, your own that. And people, for the most part, they want that. People want doctors that are performing medicine to be certified, and they want the government to enforce that. We can say, well, just let doctors do whatever they want, and whoever wants to be a doctor can be a doctor. And you know what? You'll ultimately weed out the bad ones. You know why you'll weed out the bad ones? Because enough people will get killed and they won't go to them. And from one perspective, that's totally true. I totally believe that would eventually happen. But on the other side, people want to know, and people want to be sure that the doctor they're going to is accredited, so they're going to leave that to the government. And as a prepper homesteader, regardless of what's going on in the system, I have to do my due diligence to understand and know this person has the ability to do what I need them to do, and they have knowledge, they have the experience, they have the accreditation, right? So I can do my due diligence, and I do as a prepper homesteader. That's why I'm set up the way I am, because I do my due diligence regardless of what governmental policies are in place, right? So before I buy a house, I get inspected. Before I buy a car, I look at the reviews and I inspect it. Before I go to a doctor, I look at the reviews and I verify the credentials. I do my due diligence, but most people don't, because most people, like I said, are in this idea that we live in a semi-capitalistic state in which there's stuff set up, and as long as I have the economic power to do something, that service and goods should be made available to me. And that's where we get the Karens of the world, right? I have the money, you shall service me, you need to service me, and you need to have those products available to me because I came in with the right amount of fiat currency. And ultimately, that's the dangerous part of the whole system. So that's what I got for you. Capitalism. True capitalism from a prepper homesteader perspective. So I hope you guys like the video. I hope you guys take that on. And please, if I got something wrong, tell me. I want to know. Because like I said, I'm not against capitalism. I use it every day. I can only do what I do because of capitalism. Now, I look at it differently. I look at it from a very honest perspective. You know what I mean? I know that I know there's no food scarcity. But I also know I have to raise my own animals, and I have to harvest my own animals, and I have to do that myself. But I'm never going to have food shortage problems. I'm not, because capitalism has allowed me to ensure. So it looks different than the idea that I have enough fiat currency for this product. Why isn't it here? I don't have that approach. But that's because I use capitalism to make myself sustainable. So I like capitalism because it allows me to do what I do. But I have I'm not at all under the illusion that it's a perfect system, or that's even truly a 100% beneficial system in some cases, because it's not. But it allows me to do what I need to do, so I can use it to my advantage. but it's not perfect either. But there's no perfect system. So if I had to live in an imperfect system, I want the system that's going to allow me the most freedom to do what I need to do, because ultimately I'm responsible for what I need to do, and I take the steps to make sure that due diligence is implemented. That's my overall perception of capitalism. Hope you guys liked the video. If you disagree with me, like I said, please, if you disagree with me or if I got something wrong, I need you to tell me in the comment section. I need you to tell me I got this wrong. And if I got it so wrong where we need to do an online discussion, please, I want to be honed. I want to be smarter. I want to be better. But I can't if you don't tell me. I can't if you don't challenge me. So if you're watching this video and I got it completely wrong, please challenge me, make me a better person. Hope you guys liked the video. As always, long live the Republic.